So I just got back from seeing The Batman. My first initial thoughts is that the movie was actually very enjoyable. There wasn't really anything that I didn't like or that I didn't care for. With a runtime of 3 hours, the movie is packed to the brim with plenty of action and drama and character development, while at the same time remaining faithful to the Batman mythos. Now, I didn't like everything that they did as far as the changes they made to, Batman's background and whatnot. But overall, I'd say they did a very good job. And it's really down to a few key choices that they made with the characters as to why this works as well as it does. First and foremost, I want to talk about Robert Pattinson and what he chose to do with his portrayal of Batman and the direction they went with Bruce Wayne in particular. As far as Robert Pattinson goes regarding his portrayal of Batman, I completely bought it. In fact, Robert Pattinson is one of the reasons I was looking forward to this so much, is because, he's more than proven himself to be a competent actor at this point. There are still some people that are going to hold his past against him, for his involvement with the Twilight series. But I think we're beyond that. That was years ago. Hell, the Twilight movies, when those movies were, being released in theaters, I was in high school. And that was, 10 plus years ago. I think we've moved on from the Twilight stuff. He's done a lot of work since then, and he's built up his reputation, as being this unique talent in Hollywood. So I think they did a great job choosing him, casting him into this role. And the one thing that I really like about Robert Pattinson's portrayal of Batman is what he did with the voice. And I noticed it in the initial reveal trailer for this. Instead of going for like this gruffy voice that just sounds monstrous and kind of uncontrolled, instead he goes for, a monotone, almost, I wouldn't say a nasally type of voice, but, something that's very monotone, something that's almost like a whisper. The thing that I really liked about it is that it felt natural. And you could understand what the hell he was saying. Christian Bale, with Christian Bale's portrayal of Batman, and even to a certain extent with the Ben Affleck version, the voice is one of those things that I really didn't like about those versions of Batman. Robert Pattinson's voice, he doesn't try to do the voice, the iconic Batman voice, that everyone has come to know at this point. He doesn't go for that, and as a result, it feels more in step with the Batman that we have in the comic books, the animated series and all that. It feels closer to that. As far as his portrayal of Bruce Wayne, on the other hand, I wasn't really a big fan of what they chose to do with Bruce Wayne in this movie. In several scenes, he just has his head held down and he just looks defeated throughout the entire movie, and to a fault. And I didn't really get that he's Bruce Wayne in this movie. His character is a little bit too emo and emotional throughout this movie, and that's something I didn't really care for. I didn't hate it, but I didn't really care for it. But he doesn't show up as Bruce Wayne throughout the majority of the film, so it wasn't something that was too bothersome for me. Another thing that I really enjoyed was Jeffrey Wright. That was another performance that I thought was exceptional. And I actually like that they changed Jim Gordon for this portrayal. And I was saying that before the movie came out. This is one of those cases where, race bending a character actually, worked in the movie's favor. And the same can be said for Selena Kyle, portrayed by Zoe Kravitz. Catwoman in this movie is a lot better than the Anne Hathaway version. I didn't care for the Anne Hathaway version in The Dark Knight Rises. This is much more grounded, and it feels more appropriate to, what's going on in the story. Catwoman in The Dark Knight Rises felt like a completely separate entity from the main path of, what was going on in that movie. But Catwoman in this movie, she feels essential to the plot. And not only that, but she actually does feel like the character from, like, say, the Arkham games, for example. this version of Catwoman did remind me of that character from the video game. So I thought that Zoe Kravitz did a fantastic job, and she did such a good job that I actually hope that they do ask her to come back for the sequel, because the character's inclusion in this movie actually helps develop Batman a lot more than what he would have been if Catwoman wasn't in the movie. And so she didn't really feel forced, which is something that I was kind of worried about. She felt appropriately placed. Also, Colin Farrell as the Penguin. The Penguin isn't a huge part of this movie. It's more of a side role than anything else. But the Penguin, they put him in this car chase sequence with the Batmobile, and the way that was shot was brilliant. There's a lot of POV shots that I thought actually worked extremely well, but there was something that was missing from that car chase that was portrayed more so in Batman Begins, which is the whole news angle and how everyone else views Batman as a vigilante. With this beefed up vehicle, causing mayhem through the city streets, that's something that Batman Begins captured extremely well. This movie didn't even try to go there, and I think that was a mistake. Other than that, the car sequence, that particular chase sequence was great. The standout character in this, though, and I think what was easily the best character in this entire movie, is Paul Dano as the Riddler. The Riddler in this movie is essentially the Zodiac Killer. They even have a line in the movie where the Riddler says, "This is the Riddler speaking." He contacts GCPD, and that's the line they gave him. And clearly they took that directly from the Zodiac Killer and just replaced the word Zodiac with Riddler. And I thought it was a bit on the nose, but it actually worked to the movie's benefit. A more gritty, realistic version of the Riddler in the style that they present here is flawless. I thought it was a brilliant idea to take inspiration from one of the most notorious serial killers of all time. And they take the Riddler in a very interesting direction, specifically towards the movie's climax, that I thought was extremely effective. I don't think everyone's going to appreciate the change, but I like the fact that, this movie, with these comic book movies, they take liberties with the source material and they create new versions of these established characters. Because that's the only way that, these superhero movies are going to remain fresh, is if, you introduce new ideas, new concepts that haven't been done before. And the direction they went with the Riddler is a good example of what I'm talking about when it comes to creative expression. So I thought that was a good change. And with regards to how they portray Batman in the movie, there is more of a detective angle with this movie than there has been with the other Batman movies. There was some detective work in the Dark Knight trilogy, but it wasn't anything that was too profound. Whereas in this movie, the detective angle is actually the majority of the film. And the movie presents its plot as, Batman trying to work with Jim Gordon and the police to track down the serial killer known as the Riddler. And the way they handled it, I thought, was written beautifully. In terms of aesthetic, because I think there's going to be a lot of people that are going to compare this to the Christopher Nolan movies. This is very grounded like the Christopher Nolan movies, but tonally it's not exactly the same. Aesthetic-wise, for example, this movie has a very gothic feel to it when it comes to like the Wayne Mansion and the Batcave, especially. And if you compare that to the Christopher Nolan version, that was more based in reality than what they have in here. But in regards to, what Batman can actually do, as far as certain things that you would expect the character to be capable of, this was actually more realistic than what you have in the Nolan movies. So you could tell as an audience member that they, had to pick and choose how realistic they wanted the movie to actually be. They had to pick and choose, it seems, from scene to scene. And ultimately, I liked the way that they handled it. There was just one thing in this movie that really bothered me as far as, what you would expect Batman to be capable of. and they made a very strange choice with his cape that I'm not a fan of. And it's a scene where Batman has to jump off a building, and then something unexpected happens that seems very strange, and that's when some of the magic was lost for me. And I was like, yeah, that's not really a Batman trait that I'm seeing with that particular scene. And I thought they should have handled that scene a lot better than what they did. As far as, other elements like the way the movie is shot, how Matt Reeves approached the action sequences, there's a lot of wide takes. So that was something that I had an issue with the Nolan trilogy, is the way they shot the action. In Batman Begins, for example, they chose to do this. They chose to do this Jason Bourne style guerrilla shots where everything is a close up, and then it's like a series of quick cuts. And the problem with that is you couldn't see what the hell was going on. And then they changed it for The Dark Knight and The Dark Knight Rises to more wide takes, but the choreography itself wasn't really all that good, and it felt more like Mike Tyson's Punch Out than a Batman movie, which is one of the weaker elements from the Christopher Nolan trilogy. And then you had Zack Snyder and the Ben Affleck version in Batman v Superman, which played up a lot more on the Arkham style combat done live action. To this day, that's still an amazing fight sequence, the warehouse from that movie. They don't really have anything that matches that here. It's a lot more grounded than what Zack Snyder was going for, but at the same time, it's more exciting than what Christopher Nolan did with his movies. So they found a common ground, like a middle ground between those two different styles. But I never struggled in the action sequences to understand what was going on. Everything was very clear. The same goes with the dialogue sequences. So all in all, I really do like what they did with this movie and the direction that they went. This obviously took some inspiration from the Christopher Nolan movies, but it still has its own identity. And as far as where to rank this among all the different Batman movies, I would place this just below Batman Begins, because Batman Begins and The Dark Knight, obviously to me and to many, those are the best Batman films, and they remain so. But this was its own thing, and I appreciated what they did with it, and I'm actually looking forward to seeing it again, which I may do so this weekend. So yeah, The Batman, if you haven't seen it, you should definitely check it out.